Story 1 Hero. I like helping people. My ultimate power fantasy is to make sure everyone around me is safe and happy. Story 2. Depends on what kind of powers. If I had Superman powers or even Homelander powers, I would take this person out, and a whole lot of people are going to be stopped before I get tired. Story 3 Villain. People will make that decision for you, not you. I will try to do as much good as possible and accept that I will be seen as the villain. Story 4. Depends on the powers, but I am probably going to be as low-key as possible and just use it to travel if I can fly or something. I am not going to get myself tied up in geopolitics. Before I know it, I will be chained up in some government bunker. Story 5. Dude, don't be a hero. Just don't hurt people. Live a normal life and use your powers to make life easier. Don't get involved in the rest of the world unless you want to be attacked by it. Look at Spider-Man. He is clearly a good guy, and almost everyone in the universe hates him. Captain America was literally a circus freak the army used to boost morale, and he is the perfect human. Being a hero is rarely an actual good thing, and being a villain is undoable. Just exist. Don't involve yourself in the world's problems unless you want to become one of those problems. Story 6. Probably a villain. Not because I want to be, but because power corrupts. Anyone with enough power for long enough will eventually justify their actions for the greater good or some other excuse. Story 7. I would be a villain who helps people because I do not like following rules. If I were a hero, I would have to follow a boring code of conduct. I still want to help people, but I want to do it my way. Story 8. I would try my best to keep my thoughts to myself and only help if there were no other option but to act. I would not want to disrupt the normal course of life or end up being hero or God worshipped. I would not want to be a hero or a villain. I would just want to live my life. Story 9 Villain. Take over the world. Minions get free housing and healthcare, including dental, vision, and mental care because there is no good reason to exclude it. Happy minions are loyal minions, and loyal minions keep society running. Litterbugs will not be accepted into the ranks. Story 10 Hero. Or just an everyday person with powers who occasionally does something. Too much debt to be a hero. Also, it depends on the nature of the powers. For example, if I had the power to cause an aneurysm in people I chose at will, the outcome would be different than if I could fly or had super strength. Story 11. The government will see me as an enemy. The people will see me as a mistake. The cat I managed to get out of the tree before causing $1.4 million in damages will think I am okay. Story 12. How about both? I could use my abilities to fight evil, infiltrate, and destroy those who oppose general human decency. Therefore, I would be both a villain and a hero. Story 13. Maybe an anti-hero. I would want to help the less fortunate by encouraging the rich and elites to support those in the lower classes. Story 14. I would definitely be a villain to some. In fact, all of you would be. You cannot not be both. The people who choose to be villains are damaged. Story 15. It depends on whom. I would probably want them to stop the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I would definitely be a hero to Ukrainians and the West but a villain to Russians. Story 16. Original style domestic terrorist causing chaos in society and being labeled a criminal for it. Story 17. Does the world need more villains? We should all become heroes and defeat the terrible Orange Man and his followers, and share the wealth owned by the top 2% worldwide, distributing it to everyone. Power to the people. Story 18. Anti-hero. I would do things to benefit myself, my loved ones, and close friends. Every now and then, I would perform heroic deeds to feel better. Story 19. I would not be any of those because my superpowers would allow me to operate quietly regardless of what I am doing. Story 20. I feel like most of Reddit would be the type of stereotypical villains you see in a lot of movies, where they have this fantasy of creating a better world and they are the only person who actually thinks they are the hero. Story 21. I would like to say I would be good, but I know in my heart that someone is going to do something unwise, and I will have to issue consequences. Story 22. A villain. I would take down corruption and criminal activity wherever I found it, which would naturally lead me to governments and large corporations. That would get me on a most wanted list faster than punching the Pope in the face. Story 23, hard to say. Most likely, the actions I take one day that one group approves will be overshadowed by the actions I take the next day that they do not approve of. I would aim to unite the world under my benevolent dictatorship, so most likely I would be viewed as a villain in the short term. Story 24. Something in between. I would not rule the world, but if any powerful people got out of line, I would take care of it. Story 25. Anti-hero. Ultimately, I will not fit into the perfect hero box, but being a villain would drain me after a while since I am not really all that bad. I generally distrust and dislike most people, but I recognize that most people are good, decent individuals just making their way through the world in the best way they know how. I do not mind performing a heroic act now and again, as long as I can do it my way. There will likely be a personal motive behind it as well. Story 26. Probably neither, just a person living life with superpowers. I would probably use my powers to be successful. Unless I were like Superman, extremely powerful and basically invincible, in which case I would be a hero. Story 27. I would be a good person who does bad things for good reasons. I would fight to end oppression and end up becoming the very thing I chose to destroy, ultimately becoming a villain. Story 28. I will be the anti-hero the world needs. Right now, there is no balance. Evil needs to be reduced and some good needs to perish. Story 29. I would be the hero who is a villain because he robs the rich and gives to the poor. So, figure that one out for yourself. Story 30. What exactly are you asking? If I would use my powers for good or for evil? For good, of course, but it will be my kind of good. There will always be people who see a villain no matter what you do, but I prefer to use them for myself only. I do not want anybody to know that I possess some kind of powers. If I try to be a hero, it will just be a headache and honestly would not change anything. If I become a villain, it will be boring. So I will use my powers just to make my daily life easier. Yes, I considered creating a group around me and my powers, but at least one movie says that is a bad idea. Story 31. If everyone else had powers too, I would want a power that is really convenient, like always being hydrated enough or being unable to drown, or having knowledge 3 days in advance of a natural disaster. I do not want to be intrusive to others. Story 32. With the world as broken as it is, it would be difficult to truly be a hero without slipping into villain territory. Sure, I would stop bank robberies and help cats out of trees and such, but how could I stop there? With all the corruption in the ruling class and the evils they perpetuate, how could I not use my powers to end them? Story 33, hero to some, demon to others. Eventually, you would all hate me because I would force you to be good to each other. Story 34. Depends on the day. I like to think I would use them just to make my life, my family's life, and others' lives easier, but who knows? Story 35. Assuming we are talking about Superman God-tier powers. Neutral. You have to let people play out unless some real heinous situation is happening. Then it is just a flash of light, blur, dead bad guys, gone. Story 36. Anti-hero, I think. Because there is a lot of good I would do and definitely help people. Not everything that needs to be done is good. Story 37. A hero because it just feels good to help people. When I help a customer at work, even if it is the kind of help no one will ever know about other than me, I glow inside because I can help make someone's job a little easier than it might have been. Sometimes I like to do things around the house, just little things and chores no one thinks about. Do not tell anyone because it makes me happiest to do good and go unnoticed. Story 38. All depends on what kind of powers. I will be real, though. I do not think that if I were too powerful, I would be able to sit around doing nothing. I believe I would conquer the globe. Story 39. My mother did not sweat her entire life to raise a villain. Other mothers' children deserve something better as well. Story 40. Everyone wants to think they would be a good person, a hero. At best, they would become a morally questionable anti-hero. However, the vast majority of people, given some kind of superpower or multiple superpowers, would eventually be corrupted by it and use it for their own gain. Even those with good intentions at the beginning would eventually stray from the right path. Story 41. I would be off entertaining myself in some way that would have no or limited effect on anyone else, a fortress of solitude type of thing. Story 42. I feel that everyone sees themselves as the hero. It is more helpful to understand how others perceive them. Story 43. Really depends on my power set. I would probably go anti-hero, but that is due to my dislike of authority. Story 44. It really depends on the powers. If they are extremely overpowered, then maybe, but if they are weak, I will probably just keep doing my own thing. Photosynthesis is not going to save a burning building or make me rich, but I have essentially eliminated one of my living expenses. Story 45. Every villain is a hero of their own story. The real question is in whose story you are going to be a hero. Story 46. I would like to be a hero like the X-Men. To have superpowers and be a mutant would be awesome. Even though everyone is a mutant in their own way, I would love to be able to help people when they have problems. Story 47. Hero, I would try to help as many people as possible, especially the poor and children. I don't think people should have to struggle just to survive when others have so much to spare. Story 48. Probably the sort of hero that is perceived like Robin Hood. As in, I would do good things that align with my morals. For example, people should not be rich because they exploited innocent working humans. Story 49. I think the best I could hope for would be to become a Studio Ghibli villain. Good for those who align with me and problematic for those who do not. I do not think there is a way to be seen as good by everybody. Story 50. Neutral. Probably you would not know I had powers. I would use them to produce higher quality drugs and to be able to survive challenging situations. Story 51. Definitely anti-hero. My goal would always be to do good, but I would cross many lines to make it happen. I would leave the world a better place in the end, but getting there would be messy. Story 52. I would be both and neither at the same time. John from down the street might think I am a hero, but Melissa from the neighborhood over might think I am a villain. Story 53. I would be chaotic good, making a difference and helping people at the same time. Disrupt the status quo for the better. Story 54. I would be a villain because I am not a paragon of virtue and would be corrupted by power. It would start small and, depending on how overpowered I am, would likely lead to developing a god complex. Story 55. I would probably be considered a villain, but ultimately I would make selfish choices because I have the power to do so. Story 56. I mean, if you go around killing all the people intentionally, making this world a horrible place to be, someone's bound to think of you as a villain. Boondock Saints, I guess they're both right. If you could bring people like Donnie, Pedo, and Putin to street justice, you're a villain to some and a hero to others. Story 57. I would probably be the ruler who makes all the difficult decisions for the betterment of humanity in the long run. I would take everyone's rights and unite humanity by enforcing strict control, then slowly restore rights as they are earned. I would do this to create a society that prioritizes the collective good. This assumes I would be all-powerful and immortal. Story 58. It depends on how I feel on any given day. If I just came home from work and my miserable boss, I definitely want to be a villain. If I am on a hike through some beautiful scenery up in the mountains, then I would want to be a hero. Story 59. I would be a hero, just probably not a hero you would approve of. A lot would depend on whatever powers I received. Story 60. Honestly, that would depend on who you asked. I guarantee in today's media climate, no matter what I did, I would have my own Jonah Jameson. As someone else said, it would really depend on the power. Plain invisibility, probably for some minor villain activities. Something a bit more extraordinary. I would like to help people too. Story 61. Chaotic good non-hero. I would do good things, but for my own selfish or moral reasons. I definitely would not be gallivanting around fighting villains or answering some foolish patriotic duty nonsense. However, I would certainly break some laws for both personal gain and philanthropy. I would also probably ruffle some governmental and international feathers for greater good initiatives. Story 62. Anti-hero, possibly. Definitely would not be a full hero. If I had powers, pretty much all current politicians would be wiped off the planet, as would all the people in prison for serious crimes. They would not be around much longer. I am in the United Kingdom, and I would get rid of that lot with a smile on my face. I would help everyone who is not a complete waste of life. Story 63. There are no heroes or villains, only humans with personality defects who should not have powers. I would choose the power to nullify powers of all kinds, including economic and political powers, so that we would all be equal. Story 64. Villain, but in the sense that I would just destroy people who are against me in total barbaric ways. I probably would not help many people besides the ones closest to me. Occasionally, I would help random people, but the thought that I cannot save everyone would always be in my head. Story 65. I would want powers to help adults and children involved with Adult Protective Services and the Department of Children and Family Services. I would want to teach the abusers a lesson they would not forget. I don't know if that qualifies me as a hero or just someone who could stop some of the pain. Story 66. I would have the ability to make anyone fart on my command, and I would be a complete villain about it. Story 67. I would probably be breaking laws in some way or somewhere, so a villain probably, though it depends on the power. You cannot do much harm if your power is growing your eyebrows twice as fast as the average person. Story 68. My power fantasy is to help people. I cannot imagine myself becoming a villain unless it is from the point of view of some kind of rich aristocrat. Story 69. Villains and heroes have different lifespans. Just look at Ozzy's lifespan, then compare it to someone like Charles Manson or his associates. Most of them are still alive and well-fed, both in prison and outside of it. Story 70. Probably both, depending on the person. Why? It's easy, I'm very lazy. I had a pretty good childhood, so I wouldn't be uncaring like Homelander, but I would definitely go for the easiest solution. Story 71. Honestly, I would be a villain. I would want to help, but that would probably lead to me being condemned. Probably more of an anti-hero trope, to be honest. Story 72. Invisibility. I could just disappear in public and walk around eating whatever I want. You could also catch people doing things they swear they did not do. Story 73. Anti-hero, definitely. I will be a good person, but I am not going to be used as a publicity stunt. In all honesty, a lawful evil villain. I would destroy the truly vile, corrupt, and tyrannical people in the world, without quarter or mercy. Those people who others are afraid to stand up to. I would not rule over people. I would just remove the trash so that good people can be happy and govern without fear of corruption. Story 74. I would start as a hero, become a villain, then end up as an anti-hero. Idealism, recognition of the futility of idealism, bitter resentment toward a world that left me to rot, but a sense of duty toward those in need. Write me a check, Netflix. Story 75. I would be more inclined to be a regular citizen. If something came up and I could help, I would jump in, but I am not actively searching for situations to help out or listening to police scanners to try to be a crime fighter. I would mostly mind my own business and help people when the opportunity presented itself. Story 76. It might vary from one day to the next, honestly. Some days humanity looks worth saving. Others, it looks like the worst threat to all other life on Earth and potentially the galaxy. Story 77. I would probably keep to myself. I am not particularly interested in being evil, but I would not be sure that being a hero would be worth it or if I would end up harming more than helping. Therefore, I would likely use my powers for personal convenience. Story 78. No good deed goes unpunished. Everyone who wants to be a hero will still be seen as a villain by some people. Everyone is a villain in someone's story. Story 79. It depends on how you perceive a hero. I have spent the last week thinking about how I can keep people from stealing plants and making rude comments about a garden I have been landscaping for 7 years. I was so close to ripping everything out and selling, but then I had a brilliant idea. I have access to a nursery that sustainably collects and grows endangered native plants, and I have been gifted seeds that are now seedlings. I am going to get the garden certified as a backyard habitat, and plant species protected by the Endangered Species Act and the Lacey Act. That way, even if we both die or sell the property, no one can remove the plants. This will provide the local environment with native pollinators, cleaner air, and plants that are more resistant to climate change. I care more about the plants and wildlife than the neighbors who call my garden ugly. If that makes me a villain, at least I know my motives are well-intended. My aesthetic is wild, and I like it that way. Story 80. It depends on who you ask. I know what I want and what I am willing to do to get it, keep it, or seek revenge. Story 81. I would be seen as a villain by some and a hero by others. All I will say about it is that vigilante justice is still justice. Story 82. Somewhere between anti-hero and tolerated villain, I want to be respected more than feared. I have zero interest in the self-sacrificing hero tropes, so if I am providing a service, I am receiving something in return. I also have a fondness for cold math, so none of that hero does not kill nonsense where the incredible face-melting man gets a weekend in jail and then is out melting faces again on Monday while we wait for a court date. Story 83. It depends on the scale and nature of the powers and the presence of others with powers. I am going to use them, whatever they are, preferably to make a living that way. If they can only make a living as a villain, then I will do that. Story 84. Based on my experience with Black and White, I would start out with every intention of being a hero, but I would quickly end up pushing annoying explorers into the sea. Story 85. Someone's hero is always someone else's villain. May as well be a villain then, but not an evil one. Story 86. Anti-villain. It is not that I am opposed to doing good things, but I am too lazy to actively seek that out. I am just going to relax and be selfish until someone good tells me what to do. Story 87. Villain. Lately, I have been encountering more rude and inconsiderate people, and it is irking me a lot. At this point, I choose chaos. Heck, call me Thanos for wanting to snap these people out of existence. Story 88. A lot of people confuse breaking the law with being a villain. Robin Hood and Luke Skywalker fought an unjust system on behalf of those who cannot. This is one of the most heroic things you can do. Story 89. Depends on my powers. But if I assume powers on the level of you are basically Superman and nothing short of a nuclear weapon, maybe not even that, can kill you, then I don't know. Maybe work for the government in exchange for tens or hundreds of millions. Story 90. I would definitely eliminate rapists and child abusers, so I believe I would be labeled as a villain or avenger, but definitely not as a hero with a bright and colorful costume. Story 91. I would be a mix. It is an impulse control issue. I have powers, but I also do not always stop myself from doing something I probably should not, as most humans do not. Hopefully, one of the powers is the undo button. Story 92. I will just be myself, but better. I would probably help anyone in my direct path who needs it and help myself, but I am not running around saving or hurting people. Story 93. Neither. Both are way too much work and require too much interaction with other humans. I would just use my powers to do dishes with my mind from my bed, or get to the doctors instantly, or freeze time to get a nice solid silent nap or whatever. I'm good. Story 94. I think I would be a hero because I have a really strong moral compass. However, I can get caught up in my own ideas of what is right, usually because I do not fully understand a situation, so I might accidentally be a villain. I am also good at listening and correcting my actions once I learn, so would that make me an anti-villain? Story 95. I have superpowers and it does not matter. I become the villain in everyone's story. They visited the darkness. I lived in it. Story 96. I would be able to fly and become invisible so that I could be left alone. I suppose stealing food, alcohol, and cigarettes would make me a semi-villain. Story 97. If we help one, then another gets jealous, and we become their ultimate villain in their story. Then why not become a villain? Story 98. Depends on the powers. I would probably help people if I could without danger to myself. I would also probably steal if I could. Story 99. Probably a bit of both. I would help people in dire situations. I would also help myself whenever I feel like it. I would also go to Russia or North Korea to take out certain people. Story 100. Maybe neither. But if I had to choose, I would likely be a quiet hero. One where, if you are smart enough, maybe, just maybe, you can tell there is someone out there saving or helping people. There is almost no chance of communication, Just instances where things have happened and there is no guarantee it was one person. Story 101 Villain. 100%. Why? Let's consider a scenario. There is a train full of innocent people careening toward broken tracks leading to a cliff, hundreds of feet high. No chance for survival. There is also the love of your life, about to be crushed by a falling building. Also, no chance of survival. You have time to save only one of them. The train full of innocence or your beloved. The hero, held aloft by his ideals and moral code, would save the train. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? He would make the noble sacrifice and suffer for the rest of his life for it, giving up his heart to save the world. The villain, on the other hand, would let the people on the train die to save his love. Who are they to him? What does he owe them? No one and nothing. He would sacrifice a few nameless faces to save his world. But he would be hated, you might say. Then let them hate me. I would rather be hated by nobodies with my love than be hated by myself without. Story 102. I would try to help people who need it, but at the same time, my life experiences have been traumatic enough to be a villain origin story. I probably would not be able to resist trying to retaliate against some people who have wronged me. I might also use the powers to get a lot of junk food. Hopefully, one of the powers is a perfect metabolism because I would be letting loose. Story 103. Somewhere between anti-hero and anti-villain. I would do what is best for people whether they understood it or not. Too many people vote against their own interests for me to trust them with their livelihoods. Story 104. It depends on the type of power and if I can choose what I receive. If I also have to get Superman's super hearing, then I am not accepting that deal at all. Story 105. Anti-hero because I have my own sense of justice and do not think the law is always right. People get away with too much wrongdoing. Story 106. I would be both for sure. If I were Superman, I would definitely help bring peace and solve problems, but I would also take what I want. Story 107. Given the state of the world, most would say hero, but some would say villain. Sometimes we do not like what we have to do, but if it heals the world, I am willing to dirty my hands and carry the burden. Story 108. Probably a villain, but only technically because I hurt people who are too small to be a real threat, even though they make others miserable. Story 109. But it's like I'm not good enough to be a hero and not cruel enough to be a villain. I'll be the second lead or some character that goes unnoticed. Story 110. Depends on the power, I suppose. It would be hard to be either a hero or a villain if I had the powers of Polka Dot Man or the Wall. Story 111. Anti-hero, I will side with what is right rather than pick an absolute side. Additionally, you can do the right thing but not necessarily in the right way. Story 112. It depends on the power. If I can choose a power, then I choose the absolute control of matter and transform all humans, or at least their brains, into ants so there will be no more war. As a reward, I ask for a lifetime supply of cream. Story 113. Depends on what you call a villain. I would try to save life on Earth, even if that came at the cost of humanity. Story 114. I would probably be chaotic neutral. Being a hero never ends well because you attract a lot of attention, and everyone wants a piece of you. On the other hand, being a villain takes a lot of energy and is exhausting. All that planning and menacing can wear you out. If you are chaotic neutral, you basically do not adhere to law but follow your own morality. You can intervene when you want or feel it is needed and basically tell everyone who wants to claim your time and effort to back off. Story 115. It depends on perspective. Most government officials around the world would consider me a villain. The rest consider me their friend because I am not a total jerk. Story 116. I will be neither. I would not involve myself with the world's problems and just quietly follow my own whims and interests. In other words, I will be a selfish person. Story 117. Hero, but like a simple hero. If I could wave my hands over someone and heal them, I would be here for it. Or even simpler, speak and understand all languages. Or even just calm people's emotions in a room at will. Story 118. A villain. Society sees me that way anyway, just for trying to be myself. Might as well feed them the meal of their own making. Story 119. I like to believe I would be a world-dominating king, but I cannot even kill a non-player character in a game without feeling remorse. I also lack the resolve to be a hero, I think. So yeah. Story 120. Neither. I would walk my own path in life and let the regular people live out their lives as they always have without me. Until the time comes when the world would be completely ruined without my intervention, and I rise out of secrecy like some kind of myth. Story 121. Villains aim to disrupt the status quo. Heroes always maintain it. The status quo today is messed up. Story 122. Villain because I do not want to deal with the pressure of societal expectations. Plus, as a villain, I would just do nothing. Story 123. By all metrics, a villain, but in a Robin Hood-esque way, targeting those responsible for the world's suffering. Make no mistake, I would be relentless, cruel, and unforgiving, making a show of it with full publicity. I would generate enough fear that even the most powerful leader on the planet could not convince an army to raise arms. Story 124. It really depends on the type of power. The major powers, such as invisibility or regeneration, probably end up being used by a villain. Story 125. I do not know either. There are things I could fix with the right power set, things that need to be corrected. However, many people in power would not agree. I think I would have to be an anonymous hero. Story 126. I do not think it would be up to me. Much of what we do is interpreted by others. Just look at Batman or Spider-Man. They are superheroes, but they are often seen as criminals or vigilantes. I think I would aim for a Hancock kind of existence, except without the crippling depression. Story 127. Hero. I do not have it in me to go around intentionally hurting or abusing people, and I definitely have it in me to massively overwork and self-sacrifice if I believe that it is helping someone else. Would I be effective? Well, I hope so, but I am not putting any bets on it. Story 128. My naive self would reveal myself to the world and say, I am here to help. Take me to your leader so I can list my abilities, prove I am not a threat, and we can determine where I will be most useful. Then some villainous character would turn humanity against me, just like Willem Dafoe said, and I would become like Batman. Hide in the shadows, defeat evil, and disappear before anyone can track me down. Story 129. Hero. Because even in video games I have a hard time taking the villain route. I always try to do the right thing. Story 130. It depends on the powers. I would probably see myself as a hero, but the main news would likely call me a terrorist because the biggest criminals are usually at the top. Story 131. I do not have the best mental health, so I do not think I deserve powers since I may act based on an unstable mind. Story 132. I would be a hero with a bit of an edge, not out of pure righteousness, but because helping others feels more fulfilling than ruling over them. Story 133. Well, I am already a villain, so if I had powers, I would use them to be a lazier villain because right now, villainy is hard work. Story 134. I guess in the eyes of some, I would be a villain and in others, a hero. Why I would eliminate all pedophiles. Story 135. Both. I'd stay completely secret. I'll probably take advantage to improve my own skills while also helping my family and friends improve theirs. Kind of like Robin Hood. Story 136. Depending on the powers, I could not trust myself with anything destructive now. If I had supportive or healing-based powers, I would work myself to death wiping out ailments like cancer and sexually transmitted diseases from this earth. They would be too busy getting busy to make statues of me. Story 137. Probably a hero, but the tired kind. The I will save the world but complain about it the whole time and stop for snacks halfway through type. Not evil, just mildly annoyed 24/7. Story 138. Villain. I'm selfish. I would help absolutely no one. See a woman getting robbed? Forget her. A car on fire? I'm busy. I'd be the Eminem version of Superman. He is not saving anything. Story 139. I would try to be a hero, but many people do not like power when it is not under their control. I would rather be free than be good. I will not do anything I consider immoral or evil, but it is likely I will be branded a villain. Story 140. Neither. Can I just be a person who never has to drive a car or get on a plane again because I can teleport wherever I need to be? Story 141. Antihero. The number of times I have tried to mentally throw the car in front of me, which nearly caused an accident, into the stratosphere is beyond counting. Story 142. Depending on the powers I receive, I would have to be a villain or an antihero. I cannot handle the expectations placed on heroes, and I do not care enough. The only people I would care enough to save are children. I would also use my powers to acquire many things so I can live in comfort. Anyone who tries to get in my way or capture me will be stopped. Story 143. Depends on the perspective of the person being asked. The ultra-wealthy and corporations are definitely villains. Fans of Luigi Mangione see him as a hero. Story 144. I would like to say I would be a hero, but I can see myself implementing what I think is right. When I read that, it does not sound much like a hero, so who knows? Story 145. It depends on your perspective, but I would absolutely be out there breaking a lot of laws. I am sure that would make me a villain in some eyes, but I would do whatever it takes to help those who need it and punish those who misuse and abuse. Story 146. Hero, I can't even pick evil dialogue options in video games. I am a glorified people-pleasing pushover. I am riddled with guilt when I refuse a take-home box at restaurants. Story 147. I would be selfish. A hero or villain attracts too much conflict, attention, and complication. I just make money from it and live a nicer, happier life without people knowing. It also depends on the specific power. Story 148. I would be someone providing equal treatment under the law, universal healthcare, free education, and appropriate taxation of the super rich. Depending on your perspective, that would make me a hero or a villain. Either way, I am okay with that. Story 149. I would be forced into the villain role. With power, others will envy that power and attempt to tear you down until you become what they create. They would hurt my family or commit horrible acts because of me until I could no longer hold back and then no longer wish to hold back. Story 150. Gray Hat Hero, I would assassinate problematic world leaders, organized criminals, fundamentalist religious zealots, and others. Not just for the fun of it, but in a genuine attempt to make the world a better place. However, that is why I know I could never be trusted with the power to launch nuclear weapons, because I most certainly would. Story 151. Probably something closer to the Punisher, a vigilante who is kind to the innocent but ruthless to the villains. Story 152. Why would I have to be either? I would not want to rob banks or stand up to bank robbers. I would continue to live my introverted life. No one but myself would know my powers exist. I would only use them for myself on the rarest of occasions. I am the most boring and last person you would want to get superpowers. Story 153. I would use my powers in ways that offend wealthy people. What are they going to do? Call the police on me because I wiped out billions in medical debt for people by taking from criminals? Send the army after me because I helped people escape predatory reverse mortgages? Declare me an enemy of all humanity because I shut down the student loan industry by paying off everyone's loans? Story 154. I choose hero, but I would go about it like Green Goblin. Someone robbed grandma? Toss him off the bridge. Your corporation polluted the water supply? Pay the board a visit, Ted Turner, Captain Planet style. Story 155. I would start off trying to be a hero, but honestly, the world would test that every single day. I think I would end up somewhere in between, doing good but not playing by the rules. Not for glory, just for change. Call it chaotic good with a touch of mind your business. Story 156. I would be a hero but request to be paid for my heroic acts. However, I will work for free if the person is truly down on their luck financially. Story 157. I would start as a hero with good intentions but probably end up a villain after I eliminated all the evil and my definition of evil became warped. Story 158. I would probably be seen as a villain, but the world will be a much kinder place before I am either executed or die of old age, depending on the powers I receive. Story 159. A villain. Since being a hero is becoming a slave to morality, a villain can still have morals but chooses how to act on them. Story 160. Someone being a hero or not is subjective. I bet the people of Snyder's Metropolis did not see Superman as much of a hero after the carnage. I prefer being myself. Story 161. Depends on the powers. Anything psychic would 100% turn me villainous, but if it is something like mastery over any earth element such as fire bending or wind manipulation, it would keep me on the straight and narrow. However, psychic powers, mental manipulation of others, and similar abilities would definitely corrupt me. Story 162. Both. I'd choose power over nature. Feed the world, grow medicine, help people who disagree with hurricanes. Depending on the chapter, I'd be difficult or kind. Story 163. Certainly a mix. Naturally, I would get what I want, but with such power, I would unleash it upon the lesser blessed population. I would become a monster to do otherwise. Story 164. Honestly, it depends on my power, I think. Obviously, I want to help people, but if I have something like mind reading, I probably will not be much help in the long run on either side. Story 165. Start out as a hero, see how ungrateful people are, go into hiding for 5 to 10 years, and leave the planet in search of other life forms in another galaxy. Story 166. Hero. As much as I can dislike someone, it is hard for me to wrong them intentionally, so I do not think I could do so on purpose. Story 167. I would do the right thing, but in a bad way. There is a lot of evil in this world. The world needs to heal. Story 168. I would probably be a villain because the way I would solve most of society's problems would not make me very popular. Story 169. More of an anti-hero. I have to be my own person, and there will be good days and bad days. I am not locked into anything except being myself and treating people as they treat me. In a sense, you determine which category I fit into for that moment. Story 170. Would it be evil or heroic to target wealthy individuals and politicians of all kinds unless it can be unequivocally proven that they are helping the world? I choose that. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.